President Biden is directing the federal government to buy more product from U.S. manufacturers. This week, he signed an executive order seeking to close loopholes in the existing Buy American program created under the Trump administration. It will create a senior White House role to oversee the process, raise the bar for contractors to qualify to sell foreign-made products to the government, and allow federal agencies to pay more for domestic goods. Neil Bradley is Executive Vice President and Chief Policy Officer for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, one of the largest lobbying groups in the country on behalf of the business community. Neil, welcome. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Elaine.
So before we talk about this Buy American order, I want to get your thoughts on the new Biden climate agenda rolled out today. It focuses on using new green technologies to build up industries and infrastructure in the U.S. What do you see as the economic impact?
Well, we think there's a lot of opportunity in reducing carbon emissions and confronting climate change. We applaud President Biden for his whole of government approach to get the policies right that we're going to need to be able to responsibly reduce carbon emissions in a way that also supports jobs and the economy is really going to be crucial. We intend to have a seat at the table helping design some of those policies. We're really proud of the work that the business community has already done, especially in areas around innovation, that is really helping create the new technologies that can help us meet our energy needs, but in a climate-friendly way.
How concerned are you about new regulations?
Well, we're very concerned about new regulations, in part because we're not going to solve the climate change problems through a regulatory approach. At the end of the day, we need an approach that is durable, that will span this administration, the next administration, and the administrations that will come after that. And the problem with regulations are they change from administration to administration. We saw that from Obama to Trump and now to Biden. What we really need is Congress to get engaged in here and create a framework that uses market mechanisms to bring new technology to bear and help us reduce emissions both here in the United States and confront the emissions challenges globally.
Speaking of Congress, Democrats have just introduced a bill to more than double the minimum wage from the current $7.25 an hour to $15 an hour by 2025. Now, the federal minimum wage has not increased for more than 10 years. Is it time, Neil, to raise it, and by how much?
It is time for an appropriate adjustment in the minimum wage. As you point out, it's been 10 years. We've had a minimum wage in this country for over 90 years, and Congress periodically updates it. The problem is with the $15, the more than doubling it, well more than any increase that you could attribute to inflation. And, let's be honest about it. $15 was a political campaign number. It preceded even the Biden campaign that somehow is now migrated into policy. And we shouldn't make economic policy, particularly economic policy, that could cost millions of Americans their jobs and their livelihoods because we found a good campaign slogan. That's not the way we do this. We've encouraged Republicans and Democrats, and we've said on behalf of the business community, we're willing to come together and look at a responsible increase in the minimum wage that reflects the decade plus since it's been adjusted, but won't destroy the jobs that $15 would.
So the Biden administration is currently negotiating another round of economic relief in the wake of the pandemic. What sort of aid do you want to see included for businesses, especially the smaller businesses, which are struggling much more than larger companies?
Well, first we should look back at what was just done. So credit to a bipartisan group of senators in the House and the Problem Solvers Caucus, bipartisan group of senators in the Senate and the Problem Solvers Caucus in the House for forging that $900 billion deal that became law just after Christmas. It re-upped the Paycheck Protection Program, which is now open for small businesses. That's going to be a lifeline for tens of thousands of small businesses all across this country. It expanded the Employee Retention Tax Credit. That'll provide relief to many more businesses. And so we have a good framework there. From the business community's perspective, with respect to this next package, frankly, the most important things that Washington can do is make sure that we get people vaccinated, speed up the rollout of vaccinations, speed up testing and provide funding for testing so that schools can reopen. We are never going to get this economy back on track. We're never going to get Americans back to work. We're never going to be able to fully reopen until we beat the pandemic. And the key to beating the pandemic is vaccinations and testing, and we shouldn't let any barrier get in our way when it comes to helping people get vaccinated and getting the tests we need so that schools and businesses can safely reopen.
Neil, what's your take on this retooled Buy American push?
Almost every administration has some Buy America initiative. The truth is that something like 97% of all the value of things that the U.S. federal government buys, it already buys from U.S. companies. The remainder is actually largely things that we buy overseas for use overseas. So there's not a lot more room to kind of move here. Clearly, we want American businesses to be in a position where they're both selling to the U.S. government, but they're also selling to foreign governments abroad. And so there are important treaty obligations and trade obligations, which this executive order respects, and we were glad to see that. But the impact, I think, will remain to be seen in terms of how far this executive order moves the needle.
Finally, Neil, there's been a lot of talk recently about Americans' faith in various institutions. It was interesting, last summer, Gallup polled Americans on their confidence in various U.S. institutions. So small business was trusted by 75% of respondents, more than anything else. Yet big business was trusted by just 19%. So, Neil, as someone who works with both ends of the business community, what do you think is behind that gap?
Well, I think there's generally in America, historically, there's been a big trust of anything that's described as big, whether that's big business or big government. I'd be interested to see how Congress ranks in that polling. I suspect that they're performing even worse. We're proud of the business leaders in big businesses, mid-sized businesses, and small businesses. If you think about the crises that are confronting our nation, it really has been business leaders who's been stepping to the fore. Look no further than the vaccine development. Vaccines developed in record time by private companies using the innovation that they've developed over decades of work to make sure that in our moment of need as a nation, they could deliver the vaccination that all of us want. And when you think about how businesses have adapted, moving to delivery services, curbside pickups, how we've adjusted to working from home thanks to technology, all of that is a result of those private sector businesses. Some of them are big, some of them are small, some of them are in between, but they really are the engine that keeps America moving forward.
All right, Neil Bradley from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Neil, really interesting to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Have a good evening.